Well, this video is aimed at the fellow who just wants to try out rolling a cigar. He's not even a newbie, he's a wannabe. But what he doesn't want to be is he doesn't want to be that kind of a fool who invests a whole lot of money, $200 in a tuck cutter, maybe another 60 or 80, $100 in a mold, maybe $15 in a cap cutter, maybe $30 in a Chavetta, all of that stuff. No. He just wants to try it out. He's never tried it before, and he's got a lot of questions which aren't answered in other kind of videos. For instance, he doesn't know, how do I get from this scriggly piece of mess to a leaf that's as flat and even and smoothed out as one of these I see on the videos that the guy is going to go and wrap a cigar with? Or how damp should my leaf be? How do I know when I've got it damp enough, too damp, or what the case may be? How do I mix the glue? Just simple stuff that isn't answered anywhere else. So that's what this video is for. And what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to roll a presentable cigar without a mold, just real quick by hand, something that the beginner can do. Some cigar may be like this. This was rolled, last weekend, so 4 days ago, something like that. Right? It's beginning to get a shine to it. You can see it's not perfectly smooth. It's not perfectly straight edged. This one was rolled yesterday. You can see it's still dark. It's a little bit damp compared to that one, but it's starting to get a shine on it. This one was rolled with a mold, just so you can see the difference. This is the same blend, the same tobacco, the same wrapper, and all of that. This one was with a mold. You can see that the two sides of it are a little bit more consistent and so forth, but this is what we're aiming at here, something that's presentable. That's all we're trying to do, something that we won't be ashamed to look at and that we can smoke. Here's the tools that we do have, that anybody who's into cigars will have somewhere around the house probably. First off, and most important, a cigar. Believe it or not, that's going to be your most important tool. You can ask yourself questions like, well, how much tobacco do I put in a cigar? Well, here's how much you put in a cigar right here, right? How long should it be? Well, get yourself a Robusto. You don't want to be rolling up some kind of a big Mandingo jawbreaker, because I tell you what, that's going to chew through the leaves at an unreal rate. So get yourself a Robusto. That's plenty. A Corona is even better, but for some reason they're out of fashion these days. Unwrap the thing, take a look at it, and see how it's constructed. Take a look, for instance, at these veins. You see how they're going here lengthwise to the cigar? Take a look at this wrapper now in terms of where are those veins. Well, those veins are on the underside of the leaf, supporting the leaf like this. And likewise, they are on the underside of the wrapper. They're in between the wrapper and the filler. So this we're looking at here is the top, the upper side of the leaf. How about this ridge that's going clear down here the whole length, real straight? Well, that ridge is actually just a mold mark, so ignore that. Right? And you should have a couple of those. Not to worry. This is our general look of what we want. This is something made by a professional. Right? So this is what we were aiming at when we made this guy. We got about the same size. We got about the same length. We didn't get quite as smooth on the sides of it. Same color and so forth like that. Some of the differences are, for instance, the cap. Look here. Here's the cap that the professional made. You can see how it's covering over some little sniggly bits there at the top of the cigar, right? And this cap here, well, about likewise, covering over some sniggly bits, right? We'll look here and see what they did right here. Do you see this seam here that goes around and a second one that goes around right here? Is that real hard to make out, or can you see that? Let's put that really right in the light and take a look. That's what's called the flag. Now, while the cap dresses up the top, the flag, what it does, it gives a little strength up here to the top end where your jaws are going to clomp down. You're going to slobber up the cigar. You need a little bit of strength so things don't fall apart on you. I actually like to make a flag that's a little bit bigger because I like to roll the cigar around in my mouth a little bit while I'm smoking it. It doesn't hurt anything to have a bigger flag. A lot of the commercial things will actually have a bigger flag. Maybe it comes down to here, but I like mine even bigger here. So that's the same idea. This is what we're aiming at. Now, listen to me carefully. This is your most important tool. I want to reiterate that. Why? Well, because I defy you to become a good archer if you don't shoot at a target. All right, you got to get some paper target, you got to put it on a bale of hay, you got to get out there and sight it in. And that's what we're doing with this, is we're sighting it in. We're getting a feel, the bulk of the thing, the diameter of it, the weight of it, the length of it even. Here, see how it's going from this finger down to here? If I were to make a cigar that I rolled that was this long, I could trim the ugly ends off and I could come out with something that would be about this size. If I could make a cigar that felt like the same bulk, the same quantity of ingredients inside of it, then that would be about what I'm aiming at right there. So keep that in mind, keep your target handy, and every once in a while sight in on the target. I'm betting you have one of those around the house. I'm betting you have a rag. Get yourself a rag first thing. I can tell you right now, the neophytes at anything, the teenagers, what they do, they break open the can of paint first, make a mess, and then they go running for a rag. But those of us who've done any amount of work, we know first thing you do is you get a rag and then you open the can of paint. All right? We probably have something here to take the place of our civetta somewhere around the house. Look around the kitchen there in the drawer, see if you don't have something like this. This kind of a chopper is called an ulu. If you don't have one, you can get one at the kitchen store for $7. That's what the wife bought this for me for 7 lousy bucks. There's better ones than this. There's ones with more of a curve on the bottom. This, I think, is actually meant to cut pizza more. If you don't have one of these, maybe you have one of those pizza wheels. That'll work. These work better. But there it is. That's what's going to be our civetta. That's what we're going to use. You probably have a cutter for cigars. Everybody has one of these hanging around. That'll work. I like this scissors kind here myself, even better. Looks like it double as a brass knuckle in case somebody breaks in while you're trying to roll your cigar. They shouldn't, and you can pop them in the jaw with that guy right there. You will want something to cut caps. Now, go around, root around the garage, and see what you got. Okay, any kind of a pipe fitting with a round end will work. Here's an old bushing. A bushing here like this would work. Here's something that you maybe haven't thought of, but even the bezel off of a flashlight would work. You don't have to have it real sharp. You're just going to do a crushing sort of an action to cut your cap. That would work. I've used that sort of a thing. This is a real handy deal here. This comes from Home Depot. Cost me, I don't know, a couple bucks, something like that. And then it's just a hose fitting. And all I did was I took this end where it's got that sort of an end to it there, put a round file end and narrowed it down to that. Doesn't have to be sharp again, it just has to crush the tobacco. So that's what we'll use for our cap cutter, to cut our cap on there. You probably have a squirt bottle somewhere around the house. Look in the laundry room or wherever it might be. As long as you can spritz some water, you're in good shape with that. And then, importantly, we want to have a third hand. Alright? Because there will come a time when you're trying to stretch out your leaf and you're working on it down here and the top end is up there and you said, gee, me, if only I had 3 hands. Okay, well, provide yourself with a third hand, you will have 3 hands. Alright? You will need to prepare your cigar glue beforehand. This is the only thing that we did beforehand. We did this in the garage here a couple nights back. The night before at least. And the way you do that, if you get your tobacco leaves from wholeleaftobacco.com, you buy one of these blend kits, you'll have some tobacco glue in it. If not, you can go to Amazon or to a craft store or wherever it might be, get yourself some cellulose glue. See that? Cellulose glue is the same thing they use for wallpaper, so you could use wallpaper glue, but you probably have a distaste at the idea and a disbelief if I tell you that's the same they use for wallpaper glue. So go to a craft store, say, where's your cellulose glue that they use in kindergartens? Here it is right there. You take just a little bit, this much is plenty, huh? You dump it in a pill cup with some water up to around here. You stir, 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 and stir, and no matter how much you stir, there's going to be little white buggers in there that just won't dissolve. No problem. If you have white buggers, that happens. What you do is you set that aside overnight. By morning, those white buggers will dissolve, and they will turn into that foam that you see floating there right at the top edge. That's why we did that the night before. cellulose glue. If you don't have that, or you can't get that, you can always go to the grocery store and get some pectin. Only problem with pectin, it kind of tastes citrusy, so I don't particularly care for that. I know that people have used even as simple a thing as some banana. They'll take a little banana, squash it with their finger, smooth that on the cigar where they want the glue to be, and actually it works, anything that's sticky. Right? Somewhere around the kitchen, your wife has this cutting board. Go steal it. That's going to be what you're going to cut your tobacco on. If you don't have a piece of tile like this, I bet you probably have something like this Formica somewhere around the surface of the house. Okay? This, Home Depot, $2.65. Not too hard to get something like that. The advantage of having something super slick like this is that if you wet it down with your spritz bottle, you lay a leaf on it, that leaf is going to tend to stick to that surface, meaning that you can stretch it out this way and that way, and it'll lay down real smooth and flat when you stick it on there. All right. Now, having done with the preliminaries, I hope, let's get ourselves to work. That's our target, right? We keep referring to that. We want to get a good feel of that in our hand. We want to be familiar with what we're making. We want to know, what does it feel like to be even all the way along? We want to know, how taut is it? How smooth is it? How much give do I get if I squeeze it here, there, or the other kind of a place? All right? So we're going to take a wrapper leaf. Here's a wrapper leaf. It's a far cry right now from what you see in those rolling videos as far as what they wrap up a cigar with, and consequently we're going to need to stretch it out. The leaf, of course, has two ends. This is the stem end where it admits to the trunk, and this is the tip end here where it goes out toward toward the jungle or whatever it might be. So we want to do this with real gentle hands and a tickling motion. By tickling motion, I mean we're doing like this on the underside of it, and we're doing that just to stretch that out a little bit, like so. Remember to think about gentle hands, girl hands. Now, Craig Smith, who is the 5th generation owner of F.X. Smith Sons in McSherrystown, Pennsylvania, that outfit has been rolling cigars since 1862, since before the Civil War. And he tells me that in all that time they have always hired almost exclusively women for the rolling operation, both before and after they introduced machinery, for the simple reason that this is not a job which is suited to a man's hands. A man tends to be too rough. So when you go at it, go very gently at it. Before you get it completely flat, pick up your cutter here, and with a rolling motion, not slicing, but just crushing with a rolling motion, cut one side of this leaf off. All right? Like so. Now, bear in mind, we're looking at a leaf here with two sides. Right? One side is darker than the other side. The darker side is usually the outside. Looky here, that's darker. This is the inside. Here's where the veins are more prominent here, right? Here's where the veins are less prominent. So this is going to be our outside. Consequently, when we wrap this up, we want that outside to be on the outside of the cigar. We want this to be parallel with the veins so that the veins will run lengthwise to the cigar itself, right? And so what we're going to do, we're going to tend to roll it this way. Right? We put the foot of the cigar toward the outer edge of the leaf. We roll it this way, and that makes that edge of the leaf climb up going this way. You can see that's just what we have here. Can you make out that seam on the edge of the cigar there? That's what we have right here. Now, on the other half of the leaf, of course, the veins will be going the opposite direction. So on this half, we would be rolling this way. On this half, we would be rolling this way. So you have to be kind of ambidextrous with it. That's the way we're going to go today. We're going to go this way toward the left side of the leaf. Point of the leaf pointing towards us, the stem end pointing away from us, right? And we're going to remember to do the same thing with our binder. Now you'll notice we're going at this backwards because we're going from the outside of the cigar toward the inside. We're preparing our wrapper first, then we'll prepare our binder, then we'll put our filler together, right? And then put the binder on the filler, go backwards the other direction, binder on the filler, wrapper around the binder. So that's about all we need to get that stretched out. This part we're not going to use. Where the cruder part of the veins are, we'll just cut us out a crescent. Just like so. And that, even doing that, is going to free up this leaf that much more to where now we're really able to stretch it out, tickle it out, tickle these edges here. It'll tend to want to fold over at the edges, so we're going to tickle them out so they're unfolded and do all like that. Alright, put that guy away for a minute. Let's get this out of here. Let's look at our slick surface. Why did we want a slick surface? Because we're going to take this guy, we're going to stick him down to the slick surface. So let's look at him this way. We're going parallel to these guys, so we'll lay him like that, and now we know where we need to get wet, right? Spritzity spritz, lay that down. Immediately, you see how that thing tends to stick down to that smooth, slick surface when it's wet? There we go. Flatten it all down there like that. Then back to our board. We'll take this board. We're going to get that nice and dampened up here like this, right? There's our wrapper preparation. Alrighty. Look what else we're using here for damp. You see this guy? If you have children, you might have something similar. This is just a diffuser, and you see how the steam comes up and then falls back down here? Well, if we put some leaf up in there, for instance, we're about to put our binder up in there, that's going to tend to fall down there and keep that thing nice and damp, just like we want. Okay? Now, this is going to be our binder. On the binder, you can really see these veins coming out. There's the light side. That's the inside of it. Right. You can also tell which side is the underside by the stem of it here. You see how prominent that stem is right there? As compared to this side, where that stem is hidden underneath the leaf surface. So here we go. Now, remember, we're looking for the tip end to be towards us, which is here, right? Tip end towards us, stem end away from us. There we go. And just as we did with our cigar, we're going to use with our wrapper, we're going to use the same side, the left side, for our binder. So let's cut off. We're not getting too worried about getting real close to the stem, because this is all stuff that most of it we're going to discard anyway. So here we go. There's our binder. So we're going to continue to tickle this out, tickle it out. And then, the same way that we did with our wrapper, we're going to cut a crescent out of this to get rid of the worst part of those veins. They're the coarsest part of them, and that's going to really free up our binder here to do the job for us. Alright, we're going to lay that out, and what's going to happen is we're going to roll our cigar up from here, parallel with these veins, The upper part of the binder being on the outside, the lower or underside of the binder, the underside of the binder leaf being on the inside. And we'll want to stretch it as we go along, because the way we're going to bind this, we got to stretch it out in order to have it come back onto the cigar. So the way to stretch it is, you got to have 3 hands. Here's our third hand. Now watch this. You see how that's going to hold it for us? Let's put it here and try it. Better look here. See that? So while we're working down here binding our cigar, we're working on the little details here. We don't want that to be all crunkly, so we'll go like that, and that will tend to help it to stretch out, to go around there. And then of course, as it dries up, once you let it loose, as it dries up, that's going to want to shrink down around the bunch that we have made, and thus tighten everything up. So there we are. We got our third hand. We got our binder ready. We'll flip that on out of the way. Look how damp your binder leaf is. It's limp. It's not going to be as damp as what your wrapper is going to turn out to be, because we're getting that good and drenched. But it is damp enough to be completely limp. Right? Watch this. Falls right over, right? That's about how damp you want your binder to be. Next question is, how about your filler? How damp do you want that to be? Well, I've prepared 3 filler type of leaves here. And the first one, I prepared it to be too damp. You see it flopping over? Listen to it now. You hear that? You hear a lot of rustling. You don't hear any crackling. When I go to tear the stem out of it, listen to this. You hear a ripping noise, but you don't hear any crackling noise or crunching noise. When I go to stretch it out, it will actually stretch out without tearing. And again, listen. I hold it up, it flops readily over. It may not be quite so limp as what that binder is, but it is far too limp to be good filler. Okay? So that's how you know when you got your filler too damp. If we wanted to get that filler in the proper order, we might set it aside on this board for half an hour, come back to it, and find out that it has dried considerably. But instead, in this case, we're going to go ahead and use it, and we'll figure out a way. We just made it that way kind of for a lesson. That's the only thing. So what I'm going to do is, if I have a filler that's too damp like that, I'll pay attention. I'll put this filler on the outer part of the cigar with the drier filler inside of it, so that common sense will tell us it will have a better chance of drying out as we age our cigar. Furthermore, I'm going to unfold it like this, because obviously it's going to have a better chance to dry out properly if I have it unfolded rather than if I leave it all crumpled up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this feature. I'm going to put the dry stuff in here. Then I'm going to put this other damper part over on top of it and have our bunch layered where the driest is inside and the dampest is on the outside. Now, let's look at the next batch. The next batch I have dampened to where it's just about right. Now listen to this. That's a very different sound from this, isn't it? Listen to this. All rustle, no crackle. Again, listen to this. Huh? In fact, if I bend it all the way down, you can actually hear it snap. Just begin to snap. When I tear this off, listen. Has more of a crunchy sound to it, doesn't it? I would not even attempt to try to stretch this stuff out because it would crunkle all apart in my hand as I did. So this is filler just in exactly the right condition, making that sort of a noise. If I hold it up, it's not limp. It may bend over a little bit, but it certainly is not limp. That's very different, isn't it? Right? Now let's look at a third kind of a filler. Here's where it just begins to get a little bit too dry. Listen to this now. A lot of crackling, right? When I pull on the bean, not only do I get a lot of crunching noise, but look what's happened to my edges. A lot of it crushes apart. When I go to roll it like that, there's a lot of snap, crackle, and pop, isn't there? So this is the driest. This may be just a shade too dry. Right? No big problem. We're still going to be able to use it. When people tell you, you know, so many of these leaves and so many of that leaves go into your blend, forget about it. Look at the size of the leaf. Don't even count your leaf. That's not the way to do it, because counting is going to get you nothing but trouble. All the leaves are different sizes. Instead, right here, this is going to tell you how much leaf that you need. So what we're going to do right now, we've got our 3 different kinds of leaf. We're going to put the driest in the middle and work outward from there. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to roll it up a little bit, I'm going to pinch it apart there. Now look, you see how you have more material here and less there? That's because the leaf tends to naturally taper. Well, the leaf tends to naturally taper toward both ends. So you take that part you just pinched out, you put it in there, and now you have more on this layer, more on the under layer, right? Less and less, so it's going to tend to even out. Does that make sense to you? Same thing here, right? This is going to roll up a little more readily. Pinch that apart. Take and lay it like so. Right? That's more evenly distributed. That's about the length that we want. We're looking at our target and we say, yeah, that's just a little bit longer. By the time we trim off this and that, we'll be back down to what we're looking at right here. Lay the drier stuff in the middle of that. I'm looking at this now and I'm thinking, is this really going to be enough? So I'm going to take this guy, I'm going to hold him like this. I'm going to feel the bulk of him. I'm feeling for a couple of questions. Does it feel evenly distributed, or do I have an empty spot in there somewhere, a fat spot somewhere else? Does it feel like once I squash this down and bind it, I'm going to have this thick, or am I going to need a little bit more? I think I'm going to need a little bit more. So instead of counting things, I'm just going to take like a half a leaf from here. I'm going to go like this, like I did with the other. I'm going to pull off the sniggly end there, put that in there. Lay this, which is going to be our other outside, on top of it here, right? So we're going to do this. Pinch it off. Lay this guy like so. This here, kind of roll it up roughly. This here, we'll roll it up roughly, so we've got our dampest part on the outside. And now we pause, and again, we give it a feel. Now the funny thing about it, it actually tends to get longer as you bunch it, doesn't it? So we're worried about what's from here to there. Does it feel even enough? Does it feel like it has enough material? I think so. And consequently, I'm going to take this where the pointy ends were. That's toward the foot of our leaf. I'm going to put it in here. I'm going to stretch out against my third hand, right? I hope you can see this. And I'm going to pinch it down with my fingertips, like so, and start rolling. Now, pay close attention. As you're rolling, leave that alone. Don't mess with it. Here's where you pinch. You pinch right where this inner part of the binder comes to the bowl of your bunch. Why? Because you don't want to be holding this and have it twist. See the twist that it's doing there? Well, you don't want that twist because that'll plug up your draw. So what you want to do is you want this to turn by itself along with your cigar as you roll along. So we're only going to pinch right there where it goes in. We're going to stretch out against our third hand. And we go pinchity pinch right there, just that one spot. Before we know it, this guy is going to be done. I have to move my operation from time to time to keep it within the camera range. I've got this camera on a harness on my chest, just below my chin, by the way. That's why sometimes it's going to seem like it's shaky, but I wanted you to see this right from where I'm looking at it. And there we go. Now, if I was going to put this in a mold, I would put it in a mold right now, just like so. But since I'm not going to use a mold, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a little bit of glue right here to hold this thing together till we get there. When I'm doing this, I'm looking at it and I say, you know, this is going to be round enough here, round enough here. It may be a little bit starved at the end. What do I do if it's starved at the end? Ends will tend to get starved. That happens a lot. But what I'm going to do is pretty obvious. I'll put some more material there. There's nothing wrong with doing what you have to do to try to make this right. So now let's get some glue. Dabble a little dab. Put it right in here. There we go. We're done with our third hand. We'll set that over there. We'll take this end here. We're going to just pinch it off. Right? There's our bunch. Now before we go much farther, we're going to take our bunch and roll it a couple of times to smooth out the materials inside of it. Do not roll opposite to the way that you rolled your bunch. Be sure you roll the same direction that you made your bunch. Right, like so. So it's looking real presentable, smooth. Now it looks like it's going to be a little bit narrower on either end than it is in the middle, but you know what, we'll call it a semi-perfecto. How's that sound? I mean, things like that will happen when you're doing it by hand. The important thing is to have it smooth roundabout more than anything else. Now we're going to put a cap on this. You don't have to put a cap. After all, you don't really use a cap when you're smoking a cigar. In fact, you take that damn cap off. So consequently, we're going to kind of round the upper end of this thing here like so with our cutters. And you can see you could use a V-cutter for this too if you don't have the scissor type. Sometimes I'll use toenail scissors. They work pretty good. So we'll have a kind of a rounded thing here. At least it's humped up more at the end. We're going to want it to be like yay long. So let's take this lower part here. And we'll snip that off. We're done with that. We don't need it, right? We're getting close, aren't we? Huh? All we need to do now is we need to put the wrapper on it. All right. Here's our wrapper. Here's where